again. Welcome to Remote-Backroad-Jungles, my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. My channel is Remote-Backroad-Jungles with a dash in between each word, and my link is www.youtube.com/@hiddenoasis-secret-pathfinder. And today I'm going to get right into it, and I'm going to tell you about a little-known incident of World War II that a lot of people don't really know about. It's a big thing because it has to do with the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but not many people know about what actually happened to a small group of religious in two different cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that they were the only ones who were never affected by these bombs. And it's documented, it's a historical fact, and it's a scientific fact where they were interviewed by many different scientists, doctors, etc. So I'm going to get into it now. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they took place in 1945. So at the time when it happened, they took backlash from everyone, including in America, Japan, everywhere they went, because a lot of people were not ready, prepared. They did not expect the whole thing with the nuclear bombs. They did not, even now, there's controversy as to whether somebody should use nuclear warfare. So back then, it was a major shock when this happened to people. The man who dropped the bombs, too, he took an awful lot of backlash too, but his attitude was, this is the war, and this is what actually ended the war, so that it made it that we were on top, so to speak, that we were not going to take anything anymore. And some people will still argue to this day that because of those bombs that they dropped, it saved thousands of lives, maybe millions of lives, because it stopped fighting in other areas. It told them, we mean business and that's it. But unfortunately, a very high population of civilians are the ones that got hit. So when the bombs were dropped at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were two separate cities, and in both cities there was Catholic religious communities. Those two communities of people were the only people to survive those bombings without any ill effects. And I'll tell you that as through the years what happens to them, because there were other survivors, initial survivors, but they did not survive like these religious did, that had no ill effects whatsoever. So all the survivors were examined by scientists over and over again, 200 times to be exact, 200 times through the years. Over the next 30 years, they were examined, and yet not a single one of these men suffered any ill effects whatsoever. There was one of them that when the bomb blew off, there was a piece of glass that stuck in their neck. It didn't cause any significant damage, but they did get slightly injured from the bombing. But there was no sickness, there was no cancer, radiation, etc. All other people within a mile of the blast were killed instantly. And the religious were so close, they were only blocks away from the very center of the blast. So they were extremely close. But at this community, the house where the Jesuits lived, which still stands, and every building within sight was completely leveled to the ground. So at this point, what I'm talking about when I say it still stands, I'm talking about when it happened right after the blast, the building was still standing as well. That was just at Hiroshima. But the same thing I'm going to tell you about that it happens at Nagasaki as well, also to another religious community. One were Jesuits, one were Franciscans. St. Maximilian had established a Franciscan friary. The religious that boarded at the friary were also unharmed. So the Franciscans were unharmed, and the Jesuits. Father Hubert Schiffer was one of the 8 survivors of the Jesuit community. When interviewed on the subject, he stated about that day, and I quote, "Suddenly a terrific explosion filled the air with one bursting thunderstroke. An invisible force lifted me from the chair, hurled me through the air, shook me, battered me, whirled me round and round, like a leaf in a gust of autumn wind." So he has a very powerful testimony here that he's saying that, and don't forget, religious, generally speaking, are not only supposed to be humble, but they are like calm. So even in this horrific situation, they would have to be calm. These are the people, these are the priests who come to give you last rites. If you're trapped in a car, if you're trapped underground, if you're dying from a bullet wound, they come to the hospital when you're in pieces in a horrific accident. These are the people that they're supposed to be no matter what. And yet now he's going through some horrific incident himself. And you always think, like, what does a priest do when he needs last rites, right? They need another priest to come and give them last rites. So who knows what was going through the mind of these priests, and just the regular people as well, when the bombs hit at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nobody knew really what was going on, because none of those civilians and the religious, nobody really expected this to happen. So it was like massive shock. And we've seen many of the pictures You've seen them online on TV of the little girl running and all those other people. So the next thing Father Schiffer remembers is he wakes up on the ground, and when he looks around, there was nothing but devastation. Everything around him was leveled. There is absolutely nothing. And I just want to comment that I'm going to be using notes specifically because I don't want to miss anything as usual. So after many examinations, the doctors told Father Schiffer, that his body would deteriorate, that he would just slowly wear away, like so many people who have radiation poisoning. And the symptoms of that: extreme nausea, vomiting. They have all sorts of things on their skin. They literally just start to like fall apart. The burns are horrific. And so the religious, everybody was probably just expecting to be humble. Whatever is God's will is God's will. But because of the intense radiation that he was exposed to, these doctors are all thinking he's going to be in really bad condition. But the years passed, and when tested, Father Schiffer's body contained no radiation at all, but yet he was right there by the bomb. None of the Jesuits had any ill effects at all, and they all lived many years past that day of the bombing. And I'm going to give you a little very specifics about the bomb and how much pounds per square inch. I'm going to give you all that information so you can get a visual of what was really happening that day in those people's minds, that they were scared. They're running through the streets, everybody running for cover, not knowing what in the world is going on. So at 1 kilometer, bulk temperature was in excess of 20,000 to 30,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's extremely hot. Then the blast wave at sonic velocity would have it with building pressures greater than 600 psi. So psi, pounds of pressure per square inch, 600 pounds of pressure per square inch. So the blast is phenomenal. Commercial construction brick walls are destroyed at only 3 psi, which can also cause severe ear damage and bursting windows. At 10 psi, humans will experience severe lung and heart damage and bursting eardrums. So this is like extreme damage at 10 psi. So think about how much it took for the bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When it's just at 3 psi, this happens. At 10 psi, this happens. At 3 psi, the brick building will come apart. At 20 psi, your limbs can be blown off. And at 40 psi, your head will be blown off. Cotton clothing would go on fire at about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So this happened within instantaneously, and within like seconds, all these things happen. And this happens to a massive amount of people all at once. So it's not just mass devastation, it's mass hysteria. Nobody even has time to think. That's how quickly this devastation is happening. So within a minute, your lungs would lose the ability to operate. Within 1 minute, to lose the ability. But only within seconds, it would start happening. So you wouldn't even have the chance. You couldn't speak. You couldn't scream too much. You couldn't do any of those things. It's a physical impossibility that any human at all could have suffered. And nothing at all would be left standing at 1 kilometer. So this is a miracle, and this is why the scientists, whether they believe in miracles or not, or just a regular person, it's really hard for the naysayers to say anything because of how documented this is, and the people around them that did survive the initial blast, but they deteriorated, unfortunately, in horrific conditions, while these men did not have any effects of the blast. For the people that weren't as close to the bomb, anyone that came in contact with that area that was around there for the bomb died a horrific death. Some died slower deaths, and as time progressed, their bodies shut down, they rotted away, their flesh came off, they had cancer, they would be disfigured, weak, and it would be a really miserable death. And this is how these other people died. So the priests are seeing this every day. Don't forget, they're around that area and they're seeing this, but they're probably wondering in some ways, how did they survive? Like, as the years go by too, because they have to wait out their life too to see if there's any ill effects. So when this happened, the scientists were in awe. The average person was probably a little bit doubtful. By the time the media got a hold of this, it probably was a sensation. And then there are always those skeptics that say, it never happened. But the scientists who interviewed them were appalled, and there's nothing that they could say. They didn't know. They keep testing and testing, and they're also interested, like, what is it that saved these people? They don't understand. They're religious, but what is it? So, and here's where the miracle comes in. The religious that were extremely dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary, both the religious, the Franciscans, and the Jesuits, one at Hiroshima and one at Nagasaki, they lived the Fatima message. Every single breathing, waking moment, they lived the Fatima message. Now, the Fatima message goes back to when the Blessed Virgin in Fatima appeared to the children in 1917 to 3 shepherd children. It was highly publicized at the time, and the Blessed Virgin gave 3 secrets to the children. The third one was never publicly released. There's a whole controversy to that because it was supposed to be released, but it's not that important at the moment for what happened, even though Our Lady foretold that there would be great wars and things happening again and again and again if the consecration of Russia didn't happen. But that's for another time. I'll do maybe a video on Our Lady of Fatima, but right now we're just talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so Our Lady of Fatima is a whole story in itself. But Our Lady of Fatima stressed praying the rosary every day, wearing the brown scapular daily, doing penance, something that even the people of 1917, when she appeared, had forgotten. That was something that they had already forgotten. Then during World War II, there were other apparitions as well, but during World War II, people definitely lost a lot of morality during the war. Customs were broken, and because people were so lonely, they went through so much. Obviously, there was a lot of things that happened. So the world kind of just got worse, even though we were fighting to win the war. In some ways, morality and everything got worse. So then, and multiple apparitions happened to these 3 Fatima children, and it's important why I'm mentioning this, because both Saint Jacinta and Saint Francisco, 2 of those 3 visionaries that were at Our Lady of Fatima, they died young, but Sister Lucy lived to be very old, and she had to deal with a lot of Masonic infiltration in the Vatican, a lot of controversy, a lot of perversion, and corrupt clergy trying to discredit her, and a variety of attacks from secular sources. But Sister Lucy had visions later on as well, and she was the one that really brought this devotion in more modern times to the front over here. And so it's called the 5 First Saturday Devotion, and it's 5 first Saturdays, so the first Saturday of every month, and 1, make a good confession, 2, receive Holy Communion, 3, pray 5 decades of the Rosary, 4, meditating on the mysteries of the Rosary for 15 minutes, and 5, offering this devotion, your sacrifices of this devotion that you're doing, in reparation for the blasphemies and offenses committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This is the devotion that Our Lady of Fatima asked all Catholics to do in order to obtain world peace. Now, it was a pope much earlier on, before Fatima, that actually prayed a novena, and on the last day of his novena, he got he got word of that Our Lady of Fatima was, in other words, was coming. Our Lady of Fatima, the whole apparition. Actually, I think he might have had a vision or something that happened prior to the actual vision of Our Lady of Fatima with the 3 visionaries. I'm not sure about that particular part, but it was in answer to his prayer, his novena, that Our Lady of Fatima appeared, because he had asked for a way for world peace, for an ending to so much that was going on at that time. And don't forget what was going on at that time, literally in every country in 1917. That's not even that far after the whole Industrial Revolution, and kind of like since the late 1800s to the early 1900s, everything, we might have had more technology, but a lot of things went downhill as well. And where also women went more into the workforce, and families really started to be separated. It wasn't the old-fashioned thing where like families were so much closer like they used to be. Even when they suffered, they were still so much closer. So the important thing to remember is that all this with Our Lady of Fatima, when she appeared, she promised a sign, and so that's you can look this up too, it's the day the sun danced. The sun came out of the sky, the people were in pouring rain, their clothes were soaked, and it danced and did all these crazy movements, and it looked like it was going to come down to the earth. People started screaming out their sins and confessing because they were afraid they were going to die. They thought it was the end of the world. Some people had faith, some people didn't have faith. There were the naysayers, there was Masonic people there that actually reported on this. There were people that were in total disbelief, but they believed it because they saw it with their own eyes. All the things I'm mentioning is so important because it's Our Lady of Fatima. And when that miracle happened, Our Lady of Fatima stressed the things that I mentioned earlier, and she is the one who came with the devotion of the 5 First Saturday Devotion. So when the religious were already living that devotion, the different things that Lady of Fatima had asked already early on. Then later on, yes, there's different apparitions to Sister Lucy from the same Blessed Mother, obviously, but under a different title, because I think they call her Our Lady of Rianho. But later on, she also came when Sister Lucy was much older. But they were living that message, and they credit the Blessed Virgin to saving their lives, because that's exactly what they did every single day. They lived the Fatima message. All those things that I mentioned, they were highly dedicated to the Blessed Virgin. So this might be hard for anybody who's listening to believe, but the facts are nobody had more devotion. It was obvious than those religious, and those are the ones that survived. And it's a scientific fact that you just can't survive a nuclear blast. Um, uh, that's not normal. So the scientists are baffled, everybody's baffled, fellow religious are baffled, because although they have faith, they're human too, and they're kind of wondering like, whoa, what just happened? So there's no way to doubt Our Lady of Fatima, and she definitely kept her promise to these religious, because one of the promises of the Five for Saturday devotion is that anybody who's devoted to her, she will have a special protection for them. And it's clear that these religious, both in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, had a very special devotion. And every single one of them, they lived peacefully. They still had nothing, no illnesses, things like that were contributed from the radiation or anything that happened that day. And there are pictures, you can look this up, of the Franciscan friary, the group of Jesuits that survived completely unharmed. They lived only 8 blocks from the blast. So the pictures that you see, some people claim, oh no, there was a few other buildings that were still standing as well. From all the accounts that I have read about this particular incident, it actually said no other buildings were still standing. I've actually heard some people say that AI did some things. I don't know about that, but it is documented that it went down in the books, that there was, in the books, it's documented that there was no other structures that were standing except for the structure, whether it was the house or the chapel, wherever it was, the friary, that the one Jesuits were living, and then the Franciscans. Those were the only buildings standing. There are also 15 promises attached to the Rosary devotion, which is something that the Jesuits and the Franciscans also prayed every day, which is part of the Five for Saturday devotion, meaning Our Lady of Fatima, that whole devotion. And it says that I promise my special protection and the greatest graces to all those who shall recite the Rosary. So when this happened, the religious, that was their only explanation, because it baffled science, it defied all logic. They contributed their success and their protection. They attributed, all that success to the Blessed Virgin, and that their lives to the Blessed Virgin. One other thing I want to mention too specifically is that the fallout that came hours later, it was like a black rain, and a lot of people, if you didn't get it so bad from the actual blast, you got it later on from the rain. And within hours, if it wasn't within minutes, of the other injuries that people were already having, if somehow they were hidden in a building where somehow they got not as bad as the other people, well, that rain, wherever you are, it's in the air, it's fallout. Everybody has probably seen modern movies that talk about devastation after a nuclear blast. So there was really no way to escape it. Even if you wanted to run somewhere, to go somewhere, you can't, because then you're running out in the open. So a lot of people did these things anyway because they took their chances, but the end result was the same. The only people who scientifically documented, the only people who had no ill effects are the 8 religious men from the one Jesuit community and the other men from the Franciscan community. So one in Hiroshima and one in Nagasaki. So Our Lady definitely kept her word, and it's a devotion that is definitely worth practicing for all Catholics, and I definitely encourage all Catholics to practice that devotion. And if you're not a religious person, or if you're not you're just a regular person and you come on my feed and you like my YouTube videos, I encourage you to look into this and see this historical event, because it's really amazing when you have something that science actually documents, and so there can be nobody refuting it really, and you can't it's something that can't be debated. It's pretty amazing. So if you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel, Remote-Backroad-Jungles, with a dash in between each word. And my link is www.youtube.com/@hiddenoasis-secret pathfinder. Thank you for joining me. Please like my videos, and please come next time and see some of the videos that I have, whether it's cooking videos, mysterious places, mysterious disappearances, maybe some historical facts, some historical happenings. Please let me know. Let me know what you think in the comments, and join me next time.